All right, gentlemen, we're back together. Are we ready to get this party started?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Beep boop. Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Geek Fanthology. I am your host, Neil Cordier, and I am joined this week by
The one true Ben.
and
Mike?
and speaking of mics, Ben seems to have a mic that actually works.
Huzzah.
I have internet that actually works.
Yes, you've moved to your new secret lair, and are now holed up in your laboratory and.
Actually, we're calling it the studio.
The studio. Fancy.
Fancy schmancy, yes. So, in fact,
Well, that won't. The people on the podcast can't see that, Ben. Let's hold off on that, and we'll worry about that later. So we're back from from the sojourn of me being exhausted and then having no internet. So what are we going to talk about? Oh yeah, we're going to talk about digital rights management. Fun times.
I dreaded DRM.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
And but before that, as per usual, we got signal boosts. Mike, why don't you go first?
Alrighty. Well, as I've mentioned before, I had a previous signal boost about Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition for Nintendo Switch and how fun that is. I've been playing that with the wife. They just announced Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity for Nintendo Switch will be coming out November 20th. I did not expect it to be coming out in less than 2 months, so pretty excited. And
They also, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, basically, it's a combination of Breath of the Wild and Hyrule Warriors because it's set in the 100 years before Link does his Rip Van Winkle act, and there's the big lead up to the calamity and everything that sets the table for the events of Breath of the Wild. And the art style is basically Breath of the Wild as well. And that's a big thing that differentiates it is that instead of just, okay, is it Nomi Techno? I'm not sure. Tecmo. I'm not sure how you say the name.
Tecmo
Nomi.
Koei.
Oh, I'm getting it mixed up with another company. Yeah, Tecmo Koei. That's right. Instead of them just going off and doing their thing and then having them sign, on the dotted line that yes, we are, satisfied with your licensed game, they're closely working with the Nintendo, with the Zelda developers. So yeah, and it just looks really good too. I saw the footage and stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be pretty badass. If you like either of those games, then you'll love this one.
Or if you like Dynasty Warriors. So
yeah, that's what I mean. By either, I mean Warriors in general, because anyone who plays Hyrule Warriors knows what's up.
Yeah.
All right, Ben, what you got?
All right, what I got? I got a couple things. I'm actually boosting a couple signals. Our guest on the Hamilton episode, Becca, has a TikTok. Hers is Rinxie. It's RINX. She's the follower.
Until TikTok gets banned.
Yeah, well, until then, but hopefully someone else will pick it up. So, also, been playing Avengers, Marvel's Avengers. Just picked it up a couple days after it came out, and enjoying the hell out of that one a lot. So, and I think that's about it. Aside from, I have a little quasi news.
Yeah.
Just to signal boost myself. There is likely to be more audiobooks in The Demon's Apprentice.
Lovely.
So yes.
Right on.
So yeah, nothing's set in stone. It's more like on papyrus, but
Well, fingers crossed for you.
Thank you. But,
so as per usual, I am going to do my thing where I signal boost a YouTube channel because it's what I do. Obviously, if you visit them, please tell them that we sent you. Because man, does it help to boost our signal as well. Especially when the people I'm asking you to spam are Polygon. Yes, that Polygon. Specifically, their video series with Brian David Gilbert called Unraveled, wherein he does a lot of interesting research and talks about video games and their theoretical interactions with the real world. I can highly recommend the episode where he cataloged all of the OSHA violations in every in every level of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Or the episode where he determined Bowser's military hierarchy.
Bowser ranks. I am Sergeant Bowser. I'm Corporal Bowser.
Well, no. More like Bowser is the commander in chief, and he actually he ranked all of the various monsters that you fight in the various Mario games on patterned their ranks off of the United States military. So like Goombas are privates and Galoombas are PFCs. Charging Chucks are sergeants and etc. etc.
Okay, so that sounds like Army.
Well, yeah, that's
Those are
Army.
different
He
depending on
also,
which branch.
yeah, that was Army. He also did Navy and Air Force.
Okay.
Um, so
Yeah, I was gonna say, like with the flying Koopas and shit, you'd have to get into the Air Force ranks for them.
Yeah.
And
Although
he
technically,
did.
First class sergeant, tech
Yeah,
sergeant.
and he did
yeah,
in about a 15-minute video. And they're laced with a lot of very dry, very humor that I appreciate. So if you listen to this podcast and think, "Huh, Neil's kind of funny," you'll probably think this guy's pretty funny too.
If you don't think Neil's kind of funny,
And why the hell are you listening to this podcast?
right? Exactly. What the hell are you doing here?
and you can leave a similar comment on the video because it'll be similar humor.
But
Yes.
if you think Neil is funny, you'll think
Um.
everybody
So,
thinks Mike's.
spoiler of the episode. To proceed with the episode, please state aloud the 14th word on the 6th page of Ben's 5th novel.
Music.
Thank you. And yeah, we looked that up, Ben. Sorry.
I was just like, oh, I gotta go. Yeah. Hang on, I've got one of those around here somewhere.
Assuming, of course, Page of Swords is actually your 5th novel.
Page of Swords is my second novel.
Is it your second novel?
Yes.
Well, crap.
Prom Night is number.
Well,
5.
I was also counting the Zompok books.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're counting it that way, yes, a Fifth Republic.
Okay, that was how I was counting.
Indicated.
Okay, so actually, okay, so this is funny. It is the second and fifth. Because Pages of Demon's Apprentice and Page of Swords were both first published with a small press called Pendragon. But then I got rights back. Did the Zompox.
The fifth that
then
was self-published.
right. It's the fifth
would be the
self-published novel. Yes.
Okay.
There's your caveat.
There's your installment of actually.
And also, Ben has one of the most interesting job histories of any person I've ever met in my life.
If it's weird, Ben may have done it.
Like that summer you spent crabbing.
Well, that was just growing up. I did spend a summer painting.
But yes. So we're going to be talking about DRM, and the joke of the spoiler of the week is that's actually very, very old school DRM. That's actually just super old school DRM. That's
Yeah.
it's open the in the open the instruction manual and who did we say killed this person on page 12. And if you can't enter it incorrectly, then it says you stole the game and you can't play.
So yeah.
Which makes emulating those older games a little bit harder unless the person who emulated it has the old stuff on hand, because
Well, these days I'm sure everyone has either the answers to the questions or has like images
yes.
or PDFs of the
I'm just saying, like,
instruction manuals.
it adds an entire extra layer of complexity if you're wanting to emulate and archive this older game.
Sure. Yeah.
And yes, I will talk about emulation of old games all the time because, okay, yes, technically it's probably still illegal, but at the same time, like, you can't buy these games anywhere. If you can, you should, but you can't. So I mean, sometimes emulation is the only choice you have for if you want to experience, like, I don't know, like old school games like Mule. I don't think you can buy Mule anywhere.
Just from a historical perspective, you know how there's like the video game museum, the Library of Congress, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Like, you have stuff where
I sit corrected. Apparently, Mule is back on. It is actually on Steam at the. Oh no, that's Mule Returns, not Mule.
there you go, lawyered. But yeah, I mean, it's like the only way that like I mean, short of like physically going to the museum or whatever,
Hmm.
that's the only way for people to like learn and experience the old stuff, to actually have it
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah, like piracy for the sake of historical preservation and archiving is like while it is probably technically a crime, it shouldn't be.
I mean, that's in my view, that's kind of like, possessing a banned book, right? It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
the law may say that that's not legal, but it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Hmm.
Another thing too is, if you have like a lot of like small like individuals or small development teams that are making games and learning about, developing of games and stuff, it might be valuable to them to look at like, examples of that stuff, like if they need an example of a genre, or like see how a game plays, or like how you can develop something that's interesting on a shoestring budget or whatever. Like there could be a lot of practical application to that in addition to just the like, oh, I'm curious about this historical trivia or whatever.
Well,
Hmm.
and something else where when you're dealing with software, most of the time there's really software. I mean, Windows now still uses old DOS. It's just never been taken out, and those are good ways to get the base code for
Hmm.
properties like that.
Yeah. I think we went a little bit far afield already, which is
A
kind
little
of
bit.
impressive.
Right?
But yeah, digital rights management is like it's interesting stuff. Everyone like yeah, please believe us, we are going to get to a lot of can you believe they fucked up this DRM, but like it has an interesting history. Other fun early examples would be like in the original Monkey Island game, there was the what you call it,
Dial a pirate.
was Dial a Pirate, yes. It was two interlocking code wheels that you had to turn around, and you had to match up an image. You had to match a face on like the top of a face and the bottom of a face were on two separate wheels, and then you had to see where the pirate whose face you were told to design died and what year in order to play the game.
Well, you had a same thing going on with some of the oldest D&D computer games that they did in the 80s. I think it was Pool of Radiance is the one that I was referencing.
Hmm.
It's the exact same thing you described, just without a pirate theme.
Yeah. And
Well,
Test Drive 3 had you had to match keys to cars. It like the code wheel is actually is kind of an old school is a pretty old school bit of what you call it
DRM.
DRM.
Copy
Um,
protection before DRM wasn't really a term back then per se.
Yeah, it was just copy
They
protection.
call it like copyright protection or whatever.
yeah, that was another thing. Lens lock. Lens lock was it was a little piece of plastic with clear plastic in the middle that was oriented with and polarized in specific manners so that um, if you looked through it, you could see a word that out of essentially what was just a bunch of random like lines and set etc. And you had to type that in the thing in to be able uh, to play the game.
They also had I believe it was on 3.5 discs for computers, where they would have this little like thing on the disk itself, and like it would run and you could install the game, but like if you tried to copy it, it would cause some kind of problem. And it was so silly because all you did is just like physically remove the little thing, and that's it. You've circumvented
Yeah,
it.
it was
Mhm.
a plastic tab with copy because I
It's
think
like, oh
that was
no, I have to pop a tab. How difficult.
Well,
I think
usually it was actually, and that was why it was so much better because when you went to the smaller floppies, it wasn't you had to pop a tab. You had to actually tape over where the tab was missing, so it was more complicated. Um, and other
and
things like look at this page look at this page that's nothing but red in the instruction manual, but through a piece of red plastic so that it filters out the correct wavelengths of red, so you can see the secret image.
and you're talking about an area where you could lose a game simply because the disc became damaged.
Hmm.
And then, and so a lot of times most people most often were actually making backup.
Hmm.
But
And if you were making a backup, then there wasn't too much problem because you still had the other material. It's when you shared it around that the publishers got mad, and you were like, and you were stealing their game, because this was before the massive heyday of shareware, a la Doom.
Right. Which
This
actually
was
segues into another memory of mine, is
Mhm.
playing Doom 2. There's some little message about how, like, if you are playing a like copied version of this game, you will be going to hell and feasted on by their demons or something like that. It was just a silly little message that they threw in there.
which is kind of funny because like Doom 1 was like the one of the big pioneer games of shareware.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like,
Yeah,
here,
I mean,
please
it's
give this disc to
tongue in
everyone you
cheek,
know.
no doubt. But yeah, I mean, of course, that was the whole idea, is that it was shareware wasn't the entire game; it was a few
Mhm.
levels.
Yeah, it was the
But yeah,
first
that is,
chapter.
yeah, that's right. But yeah, it's a little tongue in cheek, and I just
Mhm.
found that amusing.
But yeah, no, the games we're talking about where with like read the instruction manual are like the old like Commodore 64
Right.
and ZX Spectrum games and things along those lines. And yes, I will always call it a ZX Spectrum because it was a British computer. Also, when I learned about it from watching a bunch of British YouTubers because it was the British computer. And so I can't even think ZX Spectrum, even though that's technically how it looks. So it
yeah, it
sounds
was
wrong.
always that, right?
Yeah. Right. It's a ZX Spectrum because because the letter is Z.
Right.
Honestly, I kind of prefer the letter Z to Z anyway too, but
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead. Yeah, the next era, I guess, would be the ubiquitous CD key, when games stopped coming on 3.5 discs and started coming on
CD.
CD-ROMs.
Hmm.
I mean, that was the era I grew up in, as far as, well, gaming in general, but, PC gaming as well, because you didn't really see any kind of like CD-ROM. You didn't really see any CD-ROM console games until the PlayStation, which was like like late 95, I believe, is when the first iteration of the first PlayStation was launched. So by that time, you already had a lot of popular PC games, and of course, amongst those were the Blizzard games that had
Yep.
that. I remember the CD key. I still remember the old little pamphlet that had the CD key on it for Warcraft 2 and
Hmm.
all that good stuff.
I'm pretty sure that somewhere in my messy apartment, I actually still have my discs for Diablo 2 in the envelope that had the sticker with the product key on the front.
Yep. Yeah, and
Which
StarCraft as well.
and then of course you have the thing part of that most to copy you copy.
Well, these are typically CDs. These weren't even DVDs yet. These are just compact discs.
Yeah. Well,
Only a paltry 700 megabytes as opposed to the what is the
A
let's see.
standard single layer DVD is like 4.7 gigs, I think. A CD-ROM was around 700 megs.
4.7 gigs, very good. And now I'm curious, what about Blu-ray? Because you can and Blu-rays are about 25 gigs single layer these days. I've been looking at maybe getting an external Blu-ray drive for my computer because I like my new computer quite a bit, but it doesn't have space for an optical drive anywhere. So I'm gonna have to get like just one that plugs into a USB port because I'd really like to be able to watch movies on my computer.
yeah, I'm kind of on that myself. Of course, my Randy the Craft, every now and again, she's like, "Hey, can I get you to download?" I'm like, "No, not that I don't want, but I can't. No DV-ROM."
Luckily, they're external USB powered CD and an external Blu-ray drive's like $70. It's not bad. I just don't have that right now. Anyhow, I suppose also we can talk about like read and write protection because there were things along those lines.
And when it comes to here's another as a writer,
Mhm.
this is something my
Sure.
cut. DRM is something that I have the option,
Hmm.
but I don't. A lot of independent authors don't RM download, but yeah, a lot of.
Well, a lot of it's, I mean, a lot of it is cost benefit analysis, no matter, from the
Mhm.
smallest entity to the largest mega corporation at the end of the day,
Yeah,
because there's the benefit of, preventing piracy and, like securing the IP or whatever. And then there's the, those potential benefits and the potential costs of, like, like you said, the technical hurdles that come with it, and people that own it just not being able to use it in the way that they want to or need to, and then of course all the just the like general frustration or alienation that it can cause amongst customers and potential customers. There can be a lot of like PR and reputational snafus when it's not done right, both just technically and just like striking the right balance of accessibility and protection.
Precisely. And that's the thing is that it's also kind of an e-writer thing, that I found is that, most firms do that. I love that.
Well, it's a value proposition too, right? Like if that becomes associated with that type of product, then that can have an inherent appeal. So like, you could have someone who is likes to do a lot of digital reading or whatever, but they could be vehemently against DRM just philosophically or from a practical perspective if they're using all these different devices or whatever. And so then if you have someone who might not even take a second look at a particular book or author, but if they know that, okay, well, this is like a quote unquote indie author and they just know it's baked in that they don't have to put up with that crap, they may be more willing to put down their money and just take a chance on something because, it's one less thing to struggle with.
Yeah. And a lot of names.
Oh, we are jumping
Well,
a little forward in
yeah.
time here, but while I'm thinking about it, I did want to mention real quick. There's that company, Good Old Games, and that's like the whole business model and foundation.
Yeah, I was in
For
fact
their
just looking
company
at GOG.
is
Uh,
not having DRM, and
yeah.
that's a obvious success story of there is a market for honest, loyal customers that just don't want to fuck with DRM.
hmm Yeah, I was just looking at Good Old Games because I was there. When did I get a copy of Serious Sam?
As probably some promotional thing they gave
I'm
you to get
sure. Yeah, I'm
quickly.
sure that I got it for
I
free
remember
at
hearing
some
about that
point.
a while back. Yeah.
But like every time I look at a games library, I seem to discover games that I have no recollection of ever purchasing. Apparently, also I have both the first two Dungeon Keeper games on my GOG library. Which, what? Okay, I mean, I'm not complaining, but what?
So it's funny. Speaking of, and evidently the folks at CD Projekt Red, when they released Witcher 2, I guess on GOG, it was the non-protected version.
Mhm.
But all the pirates went after the ROM retail. When it's like put one out there you could just use, you can do this too, and you
It's
went through all the extra effort, it is like
literally like
yeah.
you could just steal like one person could buy it and then give the executable to everyone he knows.
Oh yeah, and you wouldn't have to crack it,
Right.
So,
Well, that's kind of segues to another concept, which is I maintain that there is a decent amount of people that just crack the things and hack the things just to do it, just for the
Yeah.
sake of doing it and for the challenge of it and all
There
that.
there are a number of I mean a lot of a lot of what I would like a lot of people are like, oh, there's only two kinds of hackers. There's white hats and there's black hats. I disagree. I'd say the majority are gray hats, which really they don't hack maliciously or beneficially or
Yeah.
benevolently, but they just do it because let's see if I can break into the Pentagon.
Right. Can I? Yeah.
Like it's not I want to know the nuclear launch code. It's just like I can do this.
It's like,
Insert the Jeff Goldblum meme from Jurassic Park here.
Yeah.
Right?
Just because you can, yes. Um, and a lot of people who crack, like, admittedly, a lot of people who crack games and then publish them, yeah, they're being kind of malicious there. But at the same time, a fair number of cracks just kind of happen because, yeah, it was a challenge, and sure, my friend wanted it, and I don't care what he did with it afterwards. So, which I mean, if we're going to talk about game cracks, we should also talk about like some of the legitimate reasons why games have been cracked. And the thing that jumps to my mind is Secure ROM.
Yep.
Because when it was initially implemented, Secure ROM, which was a method of online it was a system file integrity checker. Essentially, every now and again, it would ping a server and say, "Hey, are these values correct?" And if the answer was no, then the game had been either stolen or modified or something along those lines. I'm not actually really sure how it worked because honestly, I don't know how a lot of DRM works other than through some form of black magic.
Similar, yeah.
But the problem with Secure ROM was it initially installed a rootkit on your computer, which, if you don't know about computers, that's a bad thing. Because if there's a rootkit on your computer, that means people have access to your to essentially your system folders. And if they know how to do what they want, they can do literally anything they want to your computer. The only thing that's worse than a rootkit is something infecting the BIOS.
Yeah, so you can
And
understand why there'd be people that are on a crusade
so
to dismantle
people
it when that was
people got
uncovered.
real mad about that when it was announced that Spore was going to have was going to be secured with Secure ROM. That was one of the things that made people push so hard to pirate it, and they successfully managed to have the cracked version released. I think 3 days before the commercial release of the game,
Achievement unlocked.
because obviously they had to have like stolen it from a server somewhere, but they stole it from a server, cracked it, and put it on the Pirate Bay.
Oh, the other thing too, less menacing but very annoying issue was it would have like that and some other games would have a thing where it'd be like, okay, well, you can only activate it like 3 times or 5 times or whatever, and
Yep.
you would have these situations where people would have technical issues, or
And have to
people would change
reinstall the game.
computers, and
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
you had people that are out in the boonies or serving in the military or whatever, and like they had very legitimate reasons where they had to keep reinstalling or install on different devices, or it
Hmm.
wouldn't work
Yeah.
right, or there's a problem with the software itself, which then caused them to have to reinstall it, and they would just boom, 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 burn through those activations. And then
Hmm.
here's a
Right.
game they bought legitimately full price, and it just throws up a screen. It's like, tough luck.
I
You don't
had
get to play
that.
the game you bought anymore.
I had that problem when I bought Bioshock.
Yeah, that
The
was a
original.
big problem with BioShock.
Yeah, it had 5 activations,
Actually,
and
it actually started with two. They increased it after people was like,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's the one I'm thinking of that had
because
that went up to
Mhm.
5.
I
Yeah.
definitely remember
Yeah.
having a bad install. And the worst part of it was I bought it pretty close to release. And the first time I installed the game, it had installed incorrectly and flat out couldn't run, and I had to reinstall it. And hey, there's 2 activations right there.
Yep.
Now, luckily, I mean, it worked on the second run, but like that was when I became a preacher against the evils of Secure ROM, and decided to personally never buy a game that was secured with it until Secure ROM was removed,
Well, that's another
and
thing that's
no one uses it
interesting
anymore.
about the topic
So,
is that like everyone's opinions and views on it are often shaped by their own personal experiences.
mhm,
Like you're one snafu away from being very against it in general.
mhm.
Right. Well, and the funny thing about BioShock is now it's completely DRM free. And
Well, that depends on where you own it. Because here's another thing: like everyone talks about the evils of DRM. You use Steam.
Mhm.
Steam is one giant DRM platform.
Yeah,
It is
most digital
nothing
storage
but
libraries are.
digital rights management. It's good. Here's the thing: it's DRM done right. It has an offline mode, so you don't have to be always online. Because online DRM is also bullshit. Because
Right.
what if your internet goes down, like mine did last
Many of the
week?
same reasons I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As you have to be online to download the game because I mean you have to download it. But once it's downloaded locally on the machine, as long as you are signed into your Steam account, you can play the game. But you still have to be signed into your Steam account to play the game too. Now you can be signed in offline mode, but Steam has to be active,
Right.
and everyone just kind of accepts Steam these days, or the Epic Game Store, or any of those other just giant digital storefronts because you don't think about it, but it is its own very effective form of DRM.
Well, I think a major distinction between that and more traditional DRM is that that comes with a value proposition. So it's
Yeah.
like, hey, if you're using this Steam or whatever the closest competitors would be. Although let's be honest, they're well in the dust.
Epic.
I mean,
Epic's trying really hard, but
yeah, I guess because EA just basically threw up the white flag recently because they were trying to compete with Origin and they had a thing where they weren't doing their games on Steam anymore, and that they recently
and
just
then they
changed all
just
that.
recently dumped all of their games onto Steam, and
They
I'm super happy.
capitulated. Yeah. But
Um,
anyway, point is, value proposition. So like you're like, okay, you've got you've got your library and you've got all this, like you've got your friends list, your chat, your voice chat, your achievements, your in-game stuff, the little, like trading cards or whatever. You've got the sales on a regular basis where you can, get the games for a fraction of the price, and you have the ability to gift one to your friend, and there's just like all this stuff it's a whole thing. Now granted, it didn't just happen overnight. We have to remember this started in like the end of 2004 basically, and
mhm.
obviously there were some growing pains because it was a brand new thing and digital was still in its infancy as far as like digital sales and distribution. But now that it's a well-oiled machine,
Mhm. People didn't
basically
like
people
it
can
very
decide
much
if they
initially,
want it or
but
not. If they want to do
Steam came with
that.
Half-Life 2, so there was
Right. Well, it was like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, when the original Xbox came out, it was like, oh, this is the machine I play Halo on. So there's so many people that didn't give a crap about Xbox necessarily, but they really wanted to play Halo, so they bought it,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's I mean, that's the thing is, you don't necessarily. It's not like just because you use Steam, you have to buy everything on it in perpetuity. Like you can make a case by case decision on whether you want to buy the Steam version of a particular game, assuming it's available on Steam. But most are these days.
And I don't know, a lot of times I know DRM likes it with writing, so I mean, I have some games that I like, but most of the time, yeah, I'm on Steam.
Yep.
So
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I will say this as well when it comes to Steam. I've never really had any DRM issues that were inherent to Steam. Like
mhm.
the only
Mhm.
issues I've had with accessing games is because of the original version of the game that was then translated and released onto Steam. So any
Yeah.
issues I've ever had were from the original developer of the original release of the game. It was never a
Mhm.
Steam issue. And I've been on Steam since the beginning because I love Half-Life, and I got Half-Life 2 right when it came out and
Right.
set up Steam,
Yeah.
good stuff. So I'm an OG Steam user, and
Half-Life's so good.
yeah,
I
so
really
it's
wish they would make a third Half-Life game.
if there's the biggest critical thing that comes to mind with Steam is that it is the mechanism that prevented Half-Life 3 from existing because they got too
Yeah, well, you
rich
don't
on
have to
people.
make games when you make when instead you're just making money.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Anyway, but
I I feel
yeah.
like there are some other like anti-piracy measures that are worth bringing up because they're pretty danged hilarious. This is more cases I can think of DRM done right. The first one that springs to mind for me is there's a little game called Game Dev Simulator or Game Dev Tycoon, sorry, wherein you simulate being a game developer, obviously, and it's just sort of a select. Okay, I'm gonna make a game called the Masks of the Vampire game because that was always the game I played. I always made when I played Game Dev Tycoon because you can make just as many of the same name of games as you want. Um, they released a pirated version of their own game um, with a little bit of sneaky code built into it. Specifically, about the halfway point in the game, you get a message that people are pirating your games, and as a result, you're not making your sales. Um,
Whoa. So this is like a meta moral lesson.
a little bit. Well, here's the thing. So eventually, you get to the point where so many people pirate your games that you can't afford to pay your staff, and you go bankrupt. The best part about this is this only happened in the pirated version of the in the quote pirated version of the game that they released, which then led to people going onto their forums and saying, "So game piracy keeps being a problem for me. Is there any way I can like maybe research some form of DRM or something along those lines?"
Oh, the irony. Yeah, the irony is suffocating.
Yeah, it's really hilarious. Now, obviously, there are times when piracy is not only like acceptable, it's like the only thing you can do. Like if you want to be a gamer in Iran,
It's happening.
is
Yep.
if you pirate games, because you can't buy them legally. um, like there are a number of situations where piracy is the only
Yeah, there's
only
a lot of
like
banned and censored games in
like
certain countries.
not even like is an acceptable option. It's the only option if you want to be able to play games. In which case I say, yeah, go ahead and pirate the hell out of games. And most game devs agree because, well, you can't buy my game. I still want you to play it. Now,
Well,
game
and
publishers don't like that, but they consider sales and plays a zero-sum game, and they want your money.
Well,
Uh,
they can also consider it free advertising
yeah.
and future potential sales, because if somebody gets interested in a game
Hmm.
or a franchise or a developer or whatever,
Hmm.
and then things change, they move to a different country, they spread word of mouth to other family and friends
Yeah.
that live in other countries where they can purchase, download the game, etc. Like that's you got to see the big picture sometimes.
Absolutely.
You know?
Actually, there's a fair bit of evidence that actually shows that that piracy can actually help sales as opposed to hurt it, because
Mhm.
you have a certain amount of population that's always going to pirate your game no matter what.
Right.
And you're not losing money because they stole your game, because you were never going to get their money in the first place.
Yep.
Then there's a certain amount of population who pirates a game because, especially before Steam had an okay refund policy, because they want to try out a game before they decide to buy it. And those people essentially are pirating the game as a demo, because game demos aren't as much of a thing as they used to be anymore.
Right.
And so after they've stolen the game and played a certain amount, they decide whether or not they want to spend money on it. And if they do, then that's a sale that you made that you wouldn't have made otherwise.
Honestly, the only thing I really see anymore when it comes to demos is just like those free weekends or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like that's the closest, like betas and free weekends and
Mhm.
stuff. It's really all I see these days, as opposed to the traditional like demo discs and trial versions of. Well, I
Mhm.
guess you have trial versions of online games, but that's pretty much it.
Right.
I actually recently downloaded the medieval demo on my PS4 for the remaster, but that was actually released as an homage to the original medieval demo, because it's the exact same content, just in the remaster. Other fun instances of DRM done right. The fighting game Skullgirls had a pop up that would happen in pirated versions of the game. I don't know how it could detect whether or not it was pirated. Like I said, I don't understand DRM very well. I'm not a computer. I'm not a hacker. I'm a computer fan. Um, but the first time you returned to the main menu after playing an arcade mode or story mode or something along those lines, would pop up a question saying, what was the question? Pop up a question saying, what is the square root of a fish? And then just have an OK button. And similarly, people would take to Twitter or the forums and say, "What's up with this? What's the square root of a fish?" question. To which the developers would respond, "Well, it means you should probably stop pirating my game, because it only popped up it would only pop that up uh, on pirated versions of the game." Then there's nastier versions of DRM, like Earthbound's anti-piracy measure. Because cartridge piracy wasn't as big a thing, but it was a thing. And if you had pirated a copy of Earthbound through whatever eldritch abominations they determined it, the game would play perfectly fine up to the final battle with Gygas. Up to the point at which point, when you go into the weird space vagina, because it's totally a vagina. If you look at it, it's really weird. There's a lot of fetal imagery in the ending segments of
Next
Earthbound.
thing you know, you're going to be telling me those aliens were cocks the whole time. That the Ridley Scott aliens were a bunch of phalluses. Perish the thought.
Well, I mean, they were, but still.
Yep, that's my point.
In any case, you go into the into the weird space vagina, and right before you would go up, the screen would enter that would allow you to see the final boss and have this final epic confrontation. The game would freeze, would crash, it would reset, and when you turned it, and when it got back to the screen, to the launch game screen, your save game would be deleted.
That's just
It's beautiful and evil.
I have mixed feelings about it, because part of me is like, okay, well that's cool, but the other part of me is like, yeah, but haven't they just played the entire game except not getting to see the end, so they kind of isn't that effective?
Well, that's the thing, because it's it's a JRPG, although it's a JRPG light. Because it is an RPG, like, the point of playing the game is seeing it through to completion. You don't know how it resolves. You also don't get to see the final boss, who's only ever been spoken of this entire time.
Okay, yeah, I could see that being a real pain in the ass then.
So it's essentially, and given the fact that, like, let's see,
It would be like watching Jaws and then never getting to see the shark.
yeah, kind of.
yeah, it's like the movie stopping, when the shark is coming and right
Mhm.
before the climax.
Yeah, and think of it this way, like, the world record for a glitchless speed run of Earthbound, and this is a speed run, is 3 hours and 38 minutes. And that's, pressing through all the buttons, not reading any dialogue, anything, and, like, the most optimal play that you can possibly manage. The average person doesn't speedrun games, which means even if you are playing at a very fast pace, you've still probably sunk about 10 to 15 hours into the game at bare minimum, only to be flipped off at the 1 yard line. It's very effective DRM, in my opinion. Oh my god, that's hilarious. I'm sorry. So speedruns.com is where I'm getting my leaderboard, because that's pretty much the universally accepted where you get the leaderboards for speedruns. And the top four runs have the top four runs have little icons next to their run. The one for third place has a picture of the Mondo mole, which, if you've played Earthbound, and I've played Earthbound a whole heck of a lot. I don't know if either of the two of you have.
I played Earthbound.
So do you remember the archaeological dig site in the desert with the 5 moles
Vaguely,
that
I
all
remember the
claim
mole.
that they are the third strongest?
Ah, yes.
And it's that mole next as the third place trophy,
Nice.
which that's some pro moderation there, in my opinion. Sorry, I know it's completely off the wall. It's just that really tickled my funny bone. Um, I've been finding a lot of interesting things really funny. I want to signal boost one other thing, which is a I will put it in our Discord to try and drive people to our Discord. But it is the absolute best Star Trek: The Next Generation blooper that I've ever seen in my life. I recommend both of you gentlemen just briefly watch that, so you can just get a good chuckle out of it.
Which one is it? Is it
14 seconds long.
Is it Geordi and Worf?
Yes, it's Geordi and Worf.
I have seen that one. It's like they rehearsed it or something.
I know, right?
And they both do the Picard maneuver right after.
I know. If you want to know what we're talking about, everybody, you can see it on our Discord, which you can access on our Facebook page or on our website.
Teaser. Oh, I did want to mention before I forget, on DRM, Games for Windows Live being a giant pain in the ass.
Oh, fuck Games for Windows Live.
Yeah, I figure we're all on the same page here. Being Fallout fans, we all, at the very least, had to deal with that on Fallout 3. And as I was mentioning before the show to Neil, it bit me on the ass again somehow when I was playing the Steam version. Like, it just was like having the little prompt come up, even though it's been like dead for years. I had to mess around with it a bit to get it to go away. So I was like, curse you, Games for Windows Live, even from the grave, you're messing with me. It's just, I don't know. For those who don't know or don't remember, Microsoft was making a like kind of a weak, half-hearted attempt at being like, hey, look, guys, we're totally into PC games again. We're not just about the Xbox. and we're going to do a thing where you can like look at Xbox related stuff on your PC and vice versa. And hey, these are games that are made specific. And it was supposedly like a live thing, like Xbox Live, but for PC games. And it just, I don't know, it was one of those things where it's like it was a service or a product or whatever that like it was solving a problem that wasn't there, and
Yeah.
it was like a faux attempt. It was like it just struck me as a really phony attempt to like, oh, we totally care about the PC gaming market, and but we really don't. And all we're doing is just like slapping up Rand on a thing and like making it more annoying. Like all of the things that Games for Windows Live was attempting to do were things that were already being done in better contexts, like in a Steam or similar network or service. And it just was dumb and sucked to the end.
Everything they can do, someone else can do better.
And already has done. Yep.
We didn't have quite as much to talk about on this episode. Do we like I'm kind of out of stuff.
I am
Yeah.
my biggest part of my, you know.
Oh, there's also it's fitting since that was the word in the in the faux
Music?
DRM we did for the spoiler. Yeah, there's the concept of the music DRM. That's a huge thing in and of itself, and obviously that has evolved over the last 20 years quite a bit as far as the various like programs, and back when Napster was a big thing, and like actual Napster, not the legalized version that no one gave a shit about.
Or LimeWire. Who
Yeah,
remembers LimeWire?
I remember LimeWire.
Lame what?
That actually that will that'll allow me to go off on another brief screed. So thank you, Mike.
By all
This
means,
is
proceed.
this is why I hate Apple, because iTunes.
Mhm.
Because you have if you have a music library, if you have an Apple, it's on iTunes, and that means that you can potentially, if something happens to your iTunes account, not be able to listen to your music. Whether you, unless you've got the physical disc, but that's why I like the MP3. It's mine.
Mine.
And so long as the hard drive sector doesn't get corrupted, it'll just work. iTunes shenanigans with iTunes that admittedly don't happen too much anymore. This was the sour taste was put in my mouth at early implementation.
Yeah, it's evolved over the years.
But I am a bitter husk of a man who holds grudges for a long time. So
Well, and the thing about about things like certain types of stuff is that after a certain point, it's almost like you don't own what you just paid for.
Yeah, that's kind of my big thing against a lot of DRM was you don't own what you bought. You have a license for the thing you bought, and a lot of games companies would really like you to just have a license for the game you bought. It's why this podcast gets edited in Audacity, which is a demonstrably inferior program to Adobe Premiere. It's not because I can't afford Adobe Premiere. It's because I don't want to have to pay the I think $200 or $300 a year for Adobe products, even though they are absolutely the best. I've gotten to when I was in school, I did all my all my everything editing on the full Adobe suite because the school had them, and it was great. But Adobe costs a whole hell of a lot of money per year, and I'm not about that. I want to buy and own things. I don't want to own the right to use a thing for a year. It's why my version of Microsoft Office isn't Office 360. I shelled out for Office. It's why I use Sumatra PDF instead of Adobe Acrobat whenever possible, just to say screw you, Adobe. And yet I still use Steam, but that's at least with Steam I have a certain sense of ownership because Steam's not going anywhere anytime soon, and it's pay once and you own it as opposed to pay once a year.
Yeah, that's the thing about Steam is like when it was a newer thing, people were understandably trepidatious about that, about the concept of just having like the access to the game instead of a game they can touch or whatever. But it's like, all right, it's 16 years later and everything is going just fine. So
Yeah, and Steam's it ain't going nowhere at the moment. You're going nowhere. Rest in peace, Macho Man. He died recently. It was sad.
Yeah, nice reference there, by the way, because the Bonesaw line is the obvious line, but that's a bit of a deeper cut. I got you for 3 rounds.
3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. That's right.
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
I have watched the hell out of that movie. The first Spider-Man was really, really actually, I would say excellent, and it wasn't as good as Spider-Man 2, but it was so good.
I love some of the casting decisions there. Like, obviously, Macho Man, that's fantastic. And that was one of the better Bruce Campbell cameos as well.
And Willem Dafoe is always entertaining.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
He's not necessarily always a good actor, but he's always entertaining.
Well, that specific performance of his has become a great meme as well, where he's like, I'm something of a scientist myself, and then somebody just fills in the blank instead of scientist for whatever the thing or activity is.
Yep.
Good stuff.
And then you don't ever watch Antichrist. It's a movie with Willem Dafoe. It's an art film with Willem Dafoe, and just thinking about it really hurts my balls.
Yikes.
Because in that movie, I'll tell the story. In the movie, Willem Dafoe, excuse me, who does full frontal for the movie as well, by the way, gets his dick and balls crushed with a cinder block.
Ow.
Funnily enough, when they were shooting the scene, they had difficulty getting the scene to shoot well because apparently Willem Dafoe is very, very well hung, and the actress who was crushing him, plus most of the crew couldn't stop laughing at how ridiculous he was. They had to shoot that. They had to try and shoot that scene like according to a YouTube video I watched about it. They had to shoot that scene like 20 or 30 times because people just couldn't keep a fucking straight face because his dick was too big.
I'm something of a tripod myself.
Think about porn star myself.
That's funny.
But yeah, you don't really need to see the movie, but that's a very funny little bit of trivia about it. The movie just hurts. That's a weird topic to end on. Do we even have anything else?
It's like Willem Dafoe's junk. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, I think we're kind of top that.
Hung
like a horse.
No, he can top that, but chink. Okay.
We can tease the next episode.
Yes. So because we missed a thing, we're gonna actually be releasing. I'm gonna release this episode this Saturday. We're gonna record another episode in a week. And we're gonna have 3 weeks of episodes in a row. Woo! So that we're back on the correct number of episodes for the year and back on our proper release schedule. So we're just gonna tease the next episode. So I'm just gonna leave it with this. Sweep the leg. In the meantime, this has been Neil.
The one.
And
Mike.
And we will talk to you actually next week on Geek Fanthology.
Good at it.
This podcast is a production of Working Theory Productions. It was brought to you by the letters DRM and the number 2 installs per disc. Opening theme is Ultra Mega Hyperstorm, and ending thing is March of the Mind, both by Kevin MacLeod. If you enjoyed this podcast or know someone who would, please consider sharing it on your social media, sending us an email, leaving us a comment, subscribing, liking, hitting that bell for notifications if you're on YouTube, rating us on iTunes, Stitcher, etc. Anything that really supports the algorithm. If you really enjoyed this podcast, please consider supporting us either by making a one-time donation on our website at www.workingtheoryproductions.com or a reoccurring one at Patreon at patreon.com/workingtheory. A final thought. It's so easy to do DRM well. Why do so many companies insist on doing it badly?